Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden, and we're also going to stick to my home county of Skåne here in the very south of the country. For this review we are going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, and they're known for their sour beers, and I think you could go as far as saying that these guys are the premier sour beer brewery here in Sweden in fact, so definitely worth trying some of their beers if you get the chance. But yeah, for this review then, we are going to head up to Landskrona, which is a little bit to the north of me here in Lund, and we're having a look at another beer from Brekeriet. So this particular beer is the Vild barrel-aged version of Blondette. It comes in at 6% ABV, and from what I understand, this one is a blonde sour. So yeah, very curious to see what it has in store. This beer was released as part of the local Småskalig assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for April of 2021. The exact release date this month was the 6th, a little bit delayed from the normal release date of the 1st or whatever due to Easter. But yeah, nice to return to these guys once again. It has been about 6 months or so since my last Brekeriet review, if memory serves me correctly, but fingers crossed it's another good one, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. I also saw that recently these guys have released their first canned beer as well, so I'll need to get a hold of one of those and review that for you on the channel at some point soon. I've heard it is quite a nice beer actually. But yeah, let's get cracking with this one then and see how we go. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Brekeriet before, and we will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the fairly near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Brekeriet then, on to my brewery notes. So, Brekeriet, as I've told you before, were originally based in Jönköping, which is just outside of Malmö. But these days they're based in Landskrona, a little bit further north. But the company was founded back in 2011 by the Ek brothers. This is Fredrik, Christian and Andre, and they're a specialist brewery in sour beers using Brettanomyces, Lactobacillus and a few other things. But they were the first brewery in Sweden to dedicate themselves to this, and as far as I'm aware, they are the only brewery that are still kind of fully dedicated to sour beers. They have released one or two non-sour beers actually, but they're not very common. It is pretty much all sours that these guys do. But the original brewery was based in the old brew house in Jönköping, which was actually a share brewery for the local farmers once upon a time, but they brewed their first beers there in 2012, and this brewery had a very modest capacity of around 500 litres per brew, which gave them an annual output of around 38,000 litres. But as of 2015, they have a new brewery in Landskrona, which can produce 20 hectolitres per brew, basically I think that would be a 2,000 litre brew kit, but they've also got a fermentation capacity of somewhere in the region of 80 hectolitres, and that's constantly being expanded. But initially they produced their wild bunch beers continuously in Landskrona, but they brewed their sour patch, which were the smaller batch things, and so the speciality one-off beers as well, down in Jönköping for about 1.5 years before moving all of the production to Landskrona in 2017, and this was when they created a separate area for mixed fermentation. But they also have the Vild series, which of course this beer is a member of. This is their barrel-aged series, and they've used a variety of different yeast strains for this one from what I understand. In 2020 they also started distilling, and they released their first products in the latter part of the year. I think they released them maybe December, I want to say, of 2020. So there's some gins and other kind of random spirits and things in there which seem quite interesting. I don't drink spirits very much, of course, apart from a little bit of whiskey and a little bit of rum now and then. I'm more into my beers and my sakes and stuff like that. But yeah, they are distilling some spirits now, which is quite interesting. But one of the interesting points about this brewery is that in 2014 they caused a little bit of a stir because they withdrew completely from Systembolaget here in Sweden. They were citing the bureaucracy of the nationalised system, because it used to be extremely difficult to get your beers into Systembolaget. It seems to have gotten a little bit better now, and of course the breweries can release new things every month, whereas before I think you only had 3 or 4 slots in the year to actually release things, and then they had, you know, the special releases every like 2 weeks or whatever as well. But yeah, you had to plan really far in advance actually to release your beer, so it's just a pain in the arse for a lot of the breweries in fact, and that was why Brekeriet withdrew. So you actually had to go to Denmark to get a hold of these beers or get them through some of the other private European web shops. But they made the return to Systembolaget a little bit later in 2016, and as of April 2021 these guys have produced around 190 different kinds of beer. So yeah, they're going strong, doing some very good stuff. As I say, I've had some really nice beers out of the Vild series, and you know, some of the kind of regular beers as well are very nice. I mean, Sour and Salt was a favourite of mine, Wrapped in Red, Purple Rain, I'm trying to think of some of the other ones, but yeah, you can get some really, really good beers out of Brekeriet actually, and I'm very curious to see what their first canned beer's called. It's called like Tristan or something like this. So yeah, we'll see about reviewing that one for you on the channel at some point fairly soon. I'm sure I've got another beer from these guys in the fridge as well that's a collaboration with First Viatchik from Germany, so I'll need to get that reviewed at some stage too and see what that's all about. But yeah, for the moment that's all I can really tell you about Brekeriet. Like I say, probably the most well-known sour beer brewery here in Sweden. In fact, these guys have been going for a very long time, and they've inspired a lot of other breweries to go down the sour route after them. But yeah, these guys do mainly the kind of, I don't know if you can call them kettle sours technically, but they do the more kind of crisp and light sours, if that makes sense, rather than the big sort of creamy, fruity, juicy sort of things. But yeah, check some of the beers out if you get the chance. I think the furthest afield I've seen some of the Brekeriet beers was in Hong Kong actually, so that was really interesting. They had a few things from Brewski in there and a few things from Brekeriet, so it was really random to see some of my local beers over there when I was in Hong Kong actually. But yeah, that's all I can tell you about these guys. If you want to learn more, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can, of course, check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. And fingers crossed, we can get the Eck brothers on the channel at some point for a Meet the Brewery segment once the whole COVID situation gets a little bitty better. I would love to have these guys on the channel for sure. But yeah, let's get on and have a taste of this beer then. So just like you have a little look at the artwork, this kind of broken hand thing is normally what you have for the Brekeriet beers in fact. So yeah, I can really appreciate that. There is a kind of standard bottle cap on this one. This is what you'll usually find on the Vild beers as well. But it says on the side here, Blondette is an organic, elegant and complex natural beer aged in red wine barrels for 8 months. So this should be quite interesting, because I think this is, just looking at the colour of it, this is like more of a blonde sour. I wonder why they chose red wine barrels rather than white wine barrels, because that would be kind of interesting. But it says this one contains barley, wheat and rye, and it's organic as well actually. It's got the EU organic symbol on it, which is pretty cool. But yeah, 375ml bottle. I've got a feeling I paid about 45 or 50 Swedish kroners for this. Let's go with 50 because that seems a little bit more reasonable for like a barrel aged beer. So yeah, about 50 Swedish kroners, €5. Yeah, €5, about £4.50 sterling, and maybe somewhere in the region of like $5.75, $6 American. So yeah, that is pretty cool actually. But let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Very curious to see what this one has in store for us. So yeah, let's go for it. Let's go for it. So yeah, we need to pull the cork out of this one as well. Probably should have opened this. Maybe I need to start doing this with some of the videos. Just open up, if it's a sour beer like this, I maybe need to just open them up a little bit before we actually start the video. So yeah, there we are. Okay, that was easy. I was hoping that wasn't going to be hard. But yeah, let's get this guy out and into the glass then. Very curious to see what it has in store for us. So yeah, this is interesting as well. If it's been aged in red wine barrels, I'm surprised at the colour that you get out of this one. It's interesting, just a little bit of sediment at the bottom. Yeah, let me just check that this is lined up nicely so that my OCD is happy. I think that should be good. But yeah, before the head disappears, you can see that this one poured with about a quarter finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head. That has just faded away to be a very kind of thin, wispy layer, but there's a nice sort of thick ring around the edge of the glass there, which is quite nice. You could see that when we poured the beer, it was pretty much crystal clear, but then we got a little bit of sediment in it, so that's given it a wee bit of a kind of natural haze. But yeah, a lovely bright kind of hazy golden straw colour actually. So yeah, I really like how this one goes together. Yeah, really interesting for sure. Works works very, very nicely. But yeah, just a lovely natural kind of hazy element to it. There's not much else we can really say about that. Lovely bright golden colour, natural haze, one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. Nice little bit of a, there's a nice little bit of a kind of wispy head left, and then just a little bit of foamy ring around the edge of the glass. But yeah, in terms of what you would expect with a, from a sour with the name Blondette, it's not overly surprising, I would say. So yeah, let's take a look at the aroma and just see how we get on with this one. I will say that as soon as you open up this beer, you can smell some of those really vinous notes out of it. But yeah, oh yeah, you really can smell that it's quite unusual, this, in the aroma actually. One thing I do, you know, I've had a few beers out of the Vild series where I've never tried the originals, and maybe what I would like to do with some of these is try the original one that they do and then the barrel aged one actually, and just, you know, see how exactly it changes the beer. But yeah, I don't remember seeing Blondette before, so hopefully there's a re-release of the original version actually. But yeah, the aroma of this is very interesting. Backbone of the beer. The backbone of the beer is nice and smooth and oaky in a sense. So you can definitely get that bit of oaky quality in there. But yeah, there's a lot of that kind of sharp vinous element out of the beer. And you can smell that it's red wine as well, because it's just quite juicy. It's not as dry in a sense as you might get from a white wine. So yeah, that's definitely an interesting point about this beer for sure. Yeah, what? That is just really quite random, to be honest with you, how that all kind of how that all pieces together. So yeah, food for thought, definitely some food for thought in here. But yeah, the aroma out of this one is really very interesting in a lot of ways. So yeah, oaky backbone. You do get a teeny little hint of a slightly vanilla note out of it. Then you've got all those kind of sharper vinous notes pushing their way out of the beer, which I really like. But yeah, the aroma out of this one is very, very interesting. Yeah, the note out of this one is this is just really, really interesting for sure. So yeah, it certainly works, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, on the malty side of things, on top of that nice woody element, you can smell a little bit of a kind of bread crusty element to it, absolutely. There's a wee bit of a sort of white bready element in there as well, and there's a wee bit of biscuit. You know, you do get a little bit of that kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity element coming out of the beer. So yeah, woody backbone, little touch of vanilla in there. Yeah, a little touch of vanilla. There's a little woody backbone, a little touch of vanilla in there, some kind of juicy vinous notes sitting on top of that. Then on top of it, there's a good little bit of a kind of bread crusty sort of thing. And yeah, I like how that goes together. There's a wee bit of a kind of sweet McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing coming out of the beer. So yeah, the aroma that comes out of this one is very nice actually. It gets a little bit sweeter, I think, and it takes your nose a little bit time to adjust to this one, because this is really quite sharp on the aroma, in fact. So yeah, interesting for sure. On the hoppy side of things then, I don't think there's too much more to say about the malty side of this beer, but on the hoppy side of things, you get that typical little bit of earthiness there. I do get a little bit of floral character out of this one for sure, and a wee bit of grassy zestiness. But of course, when this beer has been aged for 18 months in the barrels, quite a bit of the hoppy character has dropped out, and I think the sort of impression of a bit of green hoppy zestiness and things out of this beer is perhaps driven by the kind of sour, citricy side of the beer. So that's interesting for sure as well. But yeah, the aroma on the sour side of things is how would you say? The aroma on this side of things is quite it really is quite sharp. You've got a lovely citricy note to it. You've got a kind of juicy green grapey element, which I can really appreciate as well. It's weird how you get the green grapes out of it, so you can smell the sort of red winey elements in there, giving you the tartness, but at the same time there's that, you know, white green grapey element coming out of the beer too. A little bit of gooseberry for sure as well. And you know, there's a few appley and peary elements coming out of this beer for me also. So yeah, this is a really quirky beer in how it goes together. I really wonder why they used red wine barrels with this one rather than white wine barrels. I think the white wine barrels could have been would have been a really interesting say, well, not really interesting. I think that might have been the best fit, but you know, using red wine barrels on a beer like this is potentially a really interesting experiment. But yeah, this beer, it's kind of, if you know Brekeriet and you've had a couple of their beers before, this beer doesn't do so much surprising in terms of the aroma. So be aware of that. Be aware of that with this one. But yeah, let's have a taste of this beer now and see how we get on. So this one is the Vild version of the Blondette, a 6% blonde sour, I guess we could say, aged in red wine barrels for 18 months from Brekeriet in Landskrona here in Skåne in the south of Sweden. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, cheers. That's got a wee bit of sharpness in the beginning. Yeah, but it really juicens up quite nicely. As I've told you in previous reviews, what I look for in a sour beer like this is how it goes through the transition of I look at how it goes through the transition of being kind of fruity and juicy and things to how it how it comes in with a bit of sharpness, and then how it just moves to being more kind of fruity and juicy over the course of the flavour. But yeah, you know, the thing with Brekeriet is you always get these nice, crisp, clean and slightly sharp sours, and this one's just another solid example of that. So thumbs up to Brekeriet for this beer. I think they pulled off another interesting one here for sure. So yeah, I like this one. This is a bit of a change of pace for me as well. When I think about all the other sours I've had recently, you know, the Elm 11s, the Duck Ponds, the Morgendagens, all of these kind of things. These have been the big kind of creamy, you know, I don't know, these big sort of creamy, fruity, juicy kind of sours. This one's a little bit more old school in a sense, and it's nice to have this as a bit of a change of pace actually. So yeah, it's good to see Brekeriet releasing after what feels like a little while. I think I think in the last few months when I looked at them, they were re-releasing beers that I'd had before, so that was why, at least that was part of the reason why you didn't see anything from Brekeriet on the channel for a little while. But yeah, this one's pretty solid, absolutely. But let's try and break the flavour down for you a little bit then. So yeah, straight away with this beer then, middle third of your palate, you can feel a nice sort of smooth, oaky quality coming out of the beer. So that's the backbone of your beer. You can feel there's one or two, I do get a little touch of vanilla on the front half of that middle third of the palate. You do get a little touch of a kind of vanilla element coming out of this one, which I can certainly appreciate. But yeah. Wee bit of cork. Yeah. But yeah, backbone of the beer is that nice kind of smooth oaky and vanilla sort of element in there, which I think is very, very nice. But yeah, that's, yeah, on top of that you start to get a little bit of breadiness. You can definitely get a bit of that slightly rye kind of grainy quality there, so it's a bit like you've got a sort of brown wholemealy and big bread crusty element coming out of this one, which I think is very nice. So yeah, the flavour profile of this beer is just, you know, very, very nicely done. But it sort of builds up, it really kind of builds up a little bit. It's quite similar to what I was expecting from the aroma, to be honest. And the more that I drink of it, in between the wood and that sort of bready layer, you can feel the sort of vinous qualities coming out of the beer. So they sort of sit, and it feels that the bread and the wood are kind of separated in a sense, then you've just got this layer of sour. But yeah, a little bit of a kind of brown rye bready element sitting on top of that. You've got some nice, you do have a little bit of a nice kind of bread crusty element to it as well. Then in the very centre of your palate, you've got a sweet biscuity caramel. You've got a little bit of a sweet caramelly note in the middle of the palate, then a little bit of a McVitie's digestive, pardon me, biscuity sort of thing. So yeah, I think that that really goes together quite nicely in this one for sure. So yeah, I mean, the malt base in this one is quite straightforward and quite straight shooting in some ways, but it works, yeah. Sort of brown rye bready kind of quality, a little bit of a bread crusty thing, sweet biscuit in the middle, and then yeah, a little bit sweeter the further you go out from it. So yeah, interesting for sure. But yeah, it certainly works, absolutely. So in terms of the kind of border region between middle third and back third of the palate, then, because we've covered that, what we've been talking about there is just the middle third, but you get a wee bit of a more slightly bready element on that middle, on that border region there. You can feel it builds up, you get a little bit of stronger bread crust. Then on the back third of your palate, you do get a little touch more graininess there and some of the smoother elements of the wood. You can feel the yeasty part of the beer just sitting on top of that. So at the back of your palate, the flavour of the beer almost feels a little bit taller, and as you go further forward, it condenses down. Then as you reach the middle third of your palate, it really goes like this, and it's quite condensed in a sense. So yeah, I really like how this side of things goes together, absolutely. Yeah, it works in that sense too. But yeah, it's an interesting sour beer, this one, but it is, I will say, yeah, it is quite typical of what we've had from Brekeriet before. But on the hoppy side of things, in the back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness in there. You do have a little bit of that, and as you move further forward, it develops a little bit of a herbal quality, and as you reach the kind of front corners of the palate, you get a little touch of a slightly spicy thing. But then yeah, around the front curve of the palate, it's got a little bit of a kind of lighter grassy note there, and it's a little bit zesty on that front part of the palate too. I'm actually surprised, as I say, how well the hops are holding up in this one, considering it was 18 months. It was 18 months in the barrel actually, but then again, it could be the sour elements promoting a little bit of that green quality, if you like. But yeah, this is interesting for sure. Definitely. On the kind of front third of your palate, then, this is where all the sour elements and the fruity juiciness comes out of the beer. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, there's a little bit of a bready build up. There's a wee bit of a kind of grainy element to it, but then underneath there's a bit of a smoother woody element also, which I can really appreciate too. But yeah, just behind the front tip of your tongue, that's where you get the impact of the kind of fruity, juicy, sour elements coming out of this beer. So yeah. But yeah, the thing is, I always say, what I like in sour beers is if you can get a bit of sharpness coming in, it's all about the way the beer sort of mellows out and you get the more kind of juicy elements there. So behind the front tip of your tongue there, you can feel that sharp kind of vinous-y, citricy note coming in this one. Then it just rolls out, the sort of more oily, fruity, juicy notes you get out of that roll out across the back palate. But on the hoppy side of things, you can feel underneath this that it's really interesting. On top of the kind of woody part in that front third of your palate, you get a sort of sultana, like a dried white greeny grape sort of thing on top of that. But when you come in, it's got a really, you know, you're getting a few, the further into the aftertaste you go, you'll get a little bit more of a kind of peary, appley ester out of this one, which is interesting. But yeah, when you take the beer in, you get that vinous sort of sharpness, and it just rolls out across the kind of front third of your tongue there. So I really like how that how that all goes together in this one. This sour actually develops to be a little bit more oily the further you go into the aftertaste with it, which is quite interesting. It's not the most puckering one I've come across, but I have to say I think the fact that it's red wine barrels in this one, I think that's given the beer just a little bit more juiciness, if you like, whereas it would probably, that's probably promoting some of the oily side of the fruity things, whereas if you'd used white wine barrels with this, it would probably be a little bit drier in a sense. So yeah, that's interesting for sure. But yeah, on the, I think that covers the flavour profile of this one quite well, to be honest with you. At the back of the front third of your palate, yeah, you've got a wee bit of a stronger citrusy note, and as you move further forward, you get a progressively more kind of sultana-y type element out of this one, which I really like. And then as you reach at the front tip of the tongue, there's a little bit, you have a citrusy, zesty kind of element. And then on the, at the front of that, you've got a sort of more gooseberry-ish, white green grapey element to it. So yeah, I can certainly appreciate how this beer goes about its business. This is an interesting one for sure, and using the red wine barrels with this, I think, is an interesting experiment also. So well done to Brekeriet for doing something a wee bit different. But yeah, I think we can round off this review there then. I'm going to go and sip on the rest of this. But yeah, let's leave it at that. Once again, thank you again for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Brekeriet as well. This one was the Vild version of the Blondette, 6% blonde sour beer. The Vild version aged in red wine barrels for 18 months. So yeah, definitely a curious one, this. Thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Brekeriet, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Slàinte, skål, cheers.